You know how some mornings start off with a strange kind of stillness? The kind that feels just a little too quiet, like the universe is clearing its throat before delivering some news you didn't ask for? That was the Saturday it began. The sky outside was a bland gray, and the smell of fresh coffee curled through the house like it always did, familiar, grounding. I was in my favorite chair, sipping slowly, waiting for the day to start. The kind of day you think is going to be lazy and forgettable. But it wasn't. My wife, Tabitha, had left early that morning for what she called a weekend retreat. Yoga mats, essential oils, soul-cleansing nonsense. At least, that's how she pitched it. Said it would help her rebalance. Honestly, I didn't think much of it. We'd been married over 2 decades. She'd earned a little weirdness. So I stayed home. No chores. No plans. Just me, a quiet house, and the illusion of peace. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there was our daughter, Susanna, 19, all black coat and stormy expression. "Hi, Dad," she said, smiling with the same tension as a politician shaking hands during a scandal. "Hi, Susie. I wasn't expecting you." "I know. Mom's not here, right?" That's when my stomach tightened. She came in anyway, kicked off her boots, and followed me to the kitchen. I made her one of those overpriced caramel macchiatos she liked. Figured if we were going to have an awkward conversation, we might as well do it with caffeine. So, I started, casually as possible, "Your mom." "Yeah," she said, staring at the floor. "Your mom." That's the moment I knew I wasn't just a man left behind for a yoga retreat. I was the guy sitting in a burning house holding a coffee mug, pretending it was just warm in here. "She said you didn't have much to say about it," Susie offered, like she was testing the water with a toe. "What's there to say?" She announced she was leaving with some gym instructor and walked out the door like she was late for brunch. Susie squirmed. "Well, she said it's just a weekend. She's coming back." "Sure," I said. "And so does your boomerang, until the day it doesn't." There was silence between us for a while. The kind that feels heavier than shouting. "You're really not okay, are you?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not even close." She looked confused, like someone had told her the family dog was being rehomed for tax reasons. "I mean, she told you about it. So, it's not cheating, right? Everyone's allowed to be selfish sometimes." "That's one way to look at it," I said, sipping my coffee. "But you know how to spot a tsunami?" "What?" She blinked. "The tide goes out. Way too far. It looks peaceful. Empty. Then the wave hits." Susie frowned. "That's a bad analogy." "Yeah, so's our marriage." She didn't say anything. She just reached for her coffee and held it like she wished it had vodka in it. "She'll be back Monday," she said quietly. "Maybe. But what comes back might not be what left." And just like that, my daughter, who had once thought her parents were the stable ones, the predictable ones, the ones who never broke, realized she might have been wrong. She finished her drink in silence. I watched her carefully place the empty cup on the cork coaster Tabitha always insisted on using. Like none of it mattered. Like you could just rearrange the furniture and pretend the foundation wasn't cracked. "I'm glad you're taking it well," she said as she stood. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't taking it well. I was preparing. The tide had gone out. And I could feel the pressure building in the deep. Monday came. No confetti. No dramatic apology. No running hug in the rain. Just the click of keys in the door at 6:13 p.m. sharp, because even betrayal, it turns out, can be punctual. Tabitha walked in like she'd been at a business conference. Hair tied up in one of those loose buns that makes you look disheveled on purpose. Yoga mat slung over one shoulder. That faint scent of citrus and unfamiliar cologne followed her in, like 2 silent witnesses. "Hey," she said. I didn't look up. Just circled the line in my crossword that ran across both the words loyalty and illusion. "How was your retreat?" I asked. "It was restful." She paused. "Did you water the succulents?" "Of course." I looked up then. Wouldn't want to neglect anything fragile. She blinked. Quick. Just a flicker of guilt or confusion or maybe both, too fast to catch. But I saw it. Dinner was awkward. Not because we fought, because we didn't. That was the whole trick of it. She sat across from me, carving a piece of salmon like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in our marriage and walked away whistling. "Did you call Susie?" she asked between bites. "Yeah. Yesterday." "Oh. Was she upset?" "No. But I think she's starting to see the cracks." She stirred her asparagus around like it had insulted her. I let the silence breathe for a while. Then I said it. The first pin pulled from the grenade. "Does Julian know you're married?" That did it. Fork froze midair. Her mouth twitched. "I'm sorry. You heard me." You've been checking my phone? No, I said, calm as a lake before the storm. But you left your other phone in the laundry room last week. The one under the Tide Pods. The lie was so good it should have come with a standing ovation. Truth was, I hadn't touched that phone. I didn't need to, because I had the folder. Months ago, after she started working late and coming home smelling like bergamot and secrets, I did what any quiet, overthinking, underappreciated husband would do. I started collecting things. Screenshots, call logs, calendar invites for strategy syncs that just happened to take place at rooftop wine bars. Emails with too many exclamation points from someone named Julian C. I even downloaded the hotel receipt from the night she told me she was at a sleep meditation workshop. It didn't list meditation mats, but it did include 2 breakfasts. Tabitha didn't know about the folder. It lived on a thumb drive disguised as a novelty keychain, shaped like a mini croissant, because of course it was. She had given it to me in Paris on our 10th anniversary. Funny how useful sentimental things become when sentiment dries up. Now, watching her squirm across the table, I realized something. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She was afraid of losing the comfort I gave her. The man who fixed her windshield wipers, who remembered to schedule her dental cleanings, who made sure she always had her favorite oat milk, even when the store was out and I had to drive 2 towns over to get it. Julian, I repeated. Tall, marketing guy. Laughs like someone who thinks his own jokes deserve awards. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You're being ridiculous, she finally said. You were gone for 3 days, I said quietly. And you came back without guilt, shame, or a tan. So either you went somewhere very shady, or you're too far into the lie to notice the temperature in the room has changed. Don't do this, Cal. I'm not doing anything, I said, standing. You already did. Then I left her there, wine glass trembling slightly, fork idle, the lies still warm between us. I went into the garage, sat in the truck, and pulled out the thumb drive. Tomorrow, she'd learn what it feels like to be on the wrong side of silence. And that's when the revenge started. Not with fire, not with screaming, but with something colder, something permanent. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. No, that came earlier. This was something else. This was the kind of stillness you get before a calculated move. The kind of stillness a chess player sits in when he sees checkmate 4 moves ahead. By morning, Tabitha was humming in the kitchen again, like she always did when she was nervous but pretending not to be. The smell of French roast lingered in the air. She poured me a cup, just like old times. Handed it to me with a too bright smile, like it could plug the holes in our sinking ship. Thanks, I said, taking it without a sip. Big day today? She asked, pouring almond milk into hers. Yep, I said. Biggest day I've had in a long time. She blinked, but didn't ask. That's the thing with people who cheat with precision. They think they're masters of subtlety, but they forget, so are the people they leave behind. Especially the ones like me. The quiet ones. The planners. By 10 a.m., I was sitting in a lawyer's office. Beige carpet. Fake plant in the corner. A paralegal named Dean who didn't make eye contact and smelled faintly of peanut butter crackers. I don't want to make a scene, I told the attorney. I just want it done. Clean. Legal. Unmistakable. She nodded, slid a stack of papers toward me, and said, we can initiate separation within 48 hours. Serve her privately. No courtroom needed, unless she contests. She won't, I said. She's too busy building a Pinterest board for someone else's last name. Then I handed her the folder. The one from the croissant keychain. She scrolled through the contents without flinching. This is thorough, she said. Yeah, I said. It had to be. I left the office feeling lighter. Not good. Not healed. Just unburdened. Like a man who's finally removed a splinter he'd been limping on for months. Back home, Tabitha was on the phone, laughing. That same carefully effortless laugh she used to save for cocktail parties and Instagram captions. The kind of laugh you practice more than you feel. Hey, babe, she said as I walked in. Just talking to Maddie. You remember Maddie, right? I nodded. I remembered Maddie. I remembered she was the one who introduced her to Julian. I also remembered the group text I found last week where Maddie said, if Cal ever finds out, you could just say you were already halfway out anyway. He'd believe that. I didn't say anything. Just walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and turned to her calmly. Clear your schedule for tomorrow afternoon, I said. Oh. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Why? You've got a meeting with someone named Dana Yates. She froze. Just slightly. Not enough for a stranger to notice, but I knew her. I saw the tremor. That name sounds familiar, she said. She's my attorney. Tabitha's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I was getting used to that little loop. Wait, Cal, what are you saying? I'm saying, I said slowly, like I was narrating her downfall, you don't get to rewrite the ending of this story and expect me to play the same role. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I reached into my bag, pulled out the printed invitation I'd found in her drawer the week before. Because if I remember right, you're engaged to someone else, while still legally married to me. That's not what it looks like. I laughed. It wasn't warm. It's exactly what it looks like, I said, setting the envelope down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. And I've got enough timestamps, screenshots, and hotel receipts to make even Julian's cologne sweat. She stepped back, palms slightly out. The performance was starting. The tears would come next. I knew the act. You don't have to do this, Cal, she said. We can fix it. We just lost each other. No, I said, stepping toward the door. You lost me. I stayed exactly where you left me. You just stopped looking. She reached for my arm, but I pulled back. I don't hate you, Tabitha. That would take effort. I'm just done. And with that, I walked out. What she didn't know yet was what came next. And trust me, it wasn't going to involve lawyers alone. It was going to be quieter, slower, more elegant. Because if I was going to lose 20 years to someone else's fantasy, I was going to make sure they remembered my silence for the rest of their lives. You ever watch someone realize they're not the smartest person in the room? It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's like a flicker in the eyes, a glitch in the smile, like someone pulled the curtain back, and they caught their own reflection standing there in a clown suit. That was Tabitha, the morning after I served her divorce papers. She didn't rage. She didn't cry. No, she tried something much more dangerous, civility. She came into the kitchen in a slate gray dress, the kind she wore to meetings where she wanted to sound firm but approachable. Morning, she said, like we hadn't just set fire to our lives with matching pins. I was buttering toast. Morning. She poured her coffee. 1 sugar, oat milk, a whisper of cinnamon. The ritual still lived, even if the meaning had moved out. You served me divorce papers, she said, voice like glass. I did. She took a sip. Didn't wince. I was hoping we could talk before lawyers got involved. We did talk, Tab. You just weren't listening. She exhaled slowly, the way people do when they're trying not to snap. Look, I know things have been hard, but we had something, Cal. We built a life together. We raised a daughter. Surely that counts for something. It does, I said, placing my toast down carefully. That's why I'm not burning your clothes in the yard. She blinked. I'm serious, I continued. You think this is about Julian? About some weekend getaway or half-finished wine glass? It's not. It's about death by 1,000 eye rolls. It's about you deciding somewhere along the line that I was safe, and safe meant boring. That's not fair. What's not fair, I cut in, is waking up every day next to someone who looked at me like a pair of orthopedic shoes, comfortable, dependable, and a little embarrassing to be seen with. Her face twitched. The mask cracked just a little. But I wasn't done. You want to talk about fairness? You invited me to dinner with your family and told them I was bad in bed. You humiliated me in front of your friends, then laughed like you'd made a clever pun. Do you remember that? That was a joke. No, Tab. A joke is mistaking salt for sugar. What you did was character assassination in a dress from Nordstrom. She looked like she wanted to throw the coffee, but she didn't. That was her tell. If she didn't feel in control, she defaulted to poise. Polished. Civil. It's how she got through her father's funeral without crying and our wedding without stuttering. But now? Now she was cornered. And the walls were made of everything she thought I was too dull to notice. You've changed, she said, and this time her voice held something else, fear. No, I said. I've stopped changing for you. I left her in that kitchen and went to my office, where the second half of my plan sat waiting, prepped, labeled, and color-coded, because boring husbands are efficient husbands. Step 1. The house. What she didn't know was that my name alone was on the deed. We bought it just after her job transition, and since I had the stronger credit at the time, the bank insisted on one name. She'd never bothered to change it. Too much paperwork. That oversight was now my leverage. I contacted the real estate agent we used 10 years ago. She remembered me. She also remembered Tabitha's tantrum over the upstairs bathroom grout. I told her I was ready to list. Step 2. The joint account. I'd already transferred most of my direct deposits into a separate bank 2 months ago. Left just enough in the old account for groceries and wine, because habits are comforting and I needed her to feel comfortable. Until she didn't. She tried to Venmo Julian last week for some dinner split. It bounced. Guess who got the fraud alert? Step 3. The image. This part was subtle. A carefully timed leak of photos to our mutual friend group. Me, smiling with Susie, doing volunteer work at the animal shelter, having coffee with old college buddies. Nothing suspicious. Just alive. Meanwhile, Tabitha kept posting filtered selfies and vague quotes about healing. No Julian in sight. Probably because he was still technically seeing his ex-fiancée. Yeah, that was in the folder too. And here's the cruel irony. Her performance started to unravel not because I exposed her, but because I refused to engage. You want to watch a narcissist spiral? Starve them of an audience. I didn't show up angry. I didn't shout on social media. I just disappeared in the most public way possible. Which brings us to the dinner party. Tabitha's final attempt at saving face was a gathering she hosted 2 weeks after the papers were served. She called it a reconnect celebration. I called it a eulogy for her ego. She invited friends, colleagues, even Susie, who only came because I promised to drop her off and pick her up after. I stayed home. Instead, I had a courier deliver a small gift to the party, timed for exactly 8:45 p.m., just after her 3rd glass of Chardonnay. Inside the box, a hardcover photo album. On the first page, a picture of our wedding day, smiling. On the second, a printed copy of the invitation to her engagement party with Julian. Page 3 through 20. Side-by-side comparisons of her social media captions, "He's my whole world," under different men's photos over the years. It wasn't angry. It wasn't petty. It was clinical, surgical, a reminder, to her and to everyone else, that while she played games, I played strategy. The album ended with a single page. No photo, just text. For those wondering where I went, I didn't. She did. I just finally closed the door. By 9:30, I had 10 missed calls and a voicemail that started with "How dare you?" and ended with a choked sob. I didn't listen to the middle. I was busy watching a rerun of Jeopardy, with a beer in my hand and a dog at my feet, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace that I thought after the dinner party, after the album, after I officially dropped the curtain on the farce she called a marriage, Tabitha would retreat. Maybe regroup. Maybe call her mother and cry about how I weaponized facts. That was her specialty, recasting reality as aggression. But instead, she showed up on my porch 3 days later. Hair curled. Sweater just loose enough to look unplanned. Eyes red, but carefully. She looked like grief dressed in intention. Like someone who'd practiced her breakdown in the mirror before coming over. "Cal," she said soft. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Tabitha, you have a minute?" I checked my watch. I wasn't wearing one. "About that." She smiled like we used to do this. Like I used to melt when she made that face. And once I did. Once, I would have opened the door just because she tilted her head that way. Now, it just looked like a performance that forgot its audience had left the theater. She stepped forward. "Look, I know you're angry." "I'm not." Confused, then. Hurt. Not that either. That threw her. You could see it. The face of someone who showed up to a sword fight and found out the other person brought a silence sharp enough to bleed. "Then what are you?" she asked. I thought about that. Honest question. And I gave her the real answer. "I'm free." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said slowly, "for the first time in years, I'm not waiting for someone to notice me. I'm not building a life around your moods, or guessing how much affection I'll get based on how much wine you've had. I'm not small anymore, Tab." She stared. Open. Raw. And for a second, I thought maybe she finally saw me. Not the man she curated for company. Not the husband she put in the attic of her life like some forgotten Christmas decoration. But me. "I made a mistake," she said. "No," I corrected. "You made 100 decisions. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. You chose this." I didn't know what I was doing. I shook my head. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't think I'd find out. And when I did, you didn't think I'd leave." She stepped closer, hands slightly raised, like peace flags that had already seen too many wars. "I miss you. You miss the version of me who didn't speak up. I loved you." "I believe you did," I said. "In your way. But it wasn't a way that could hold both of us. It only had room for you." Her lip trembled. She looked down at the porch like the wood might offer her a script. When none came, she whispered, "Julian left." I nodded once. Of course he did. Do you want to know why? Nope. But he left, I said, because he saw the real you. The one I protected. The one I covered for. And without the buffer of my silence, without me folding the damage into a narrative people could forgive, he realized what it cost. She laughed once, sharp. So you're perfect now? That it? No. I was never perfect. I was just present. And that used to be enough. Until someone shinier came along. She looked at me then, really looked. And what she saw must have unsettled her. Because I wasn't pleading. I wasn't breaking. I was done. Can I come in? She asked. No. I just want to talk. We are. She crossed her arms, angry now. Familiar territory. Anger was her favorite blanket, always nearby, always warm. You're really not going to even try to fix this? I looked at her. The woman I give a decade and a half to. The one who used to leave sticky notes in my lunchbox with hearts and dumb inside jokes. The one who cried when I bought her a plant because she said it meant I believed in growth. I looked at her and said nothing. Because what do you say to someone who watched you drown and only screamed when you stopped kicking? She turned to leave, paused, and glanced back over her shoulder. I hope you regret this someday. And I finally smiled. I hope you don't. She walked away with stiff shoulders, the kind people hold when they've already lost but want to look tall walking off the battlefield. And that's when I knew. She wasn't coming back because she loved me. She was coming back because no one else would hold the mirror the way I did. Gently, patiently, without flinching. But the mirror's gone now. And so am I. Later that night, I sat alone on the back porch, the one I spent 3 summers building so she could have a reading nook. Funny, she never read out there. Just took photos of it for her blog. The stars were out. Quiet. Honest. I poured myself a drink, flipped open a book, and let the stillness settle. Tabitha thought the worst thing I could do was leave. She was wrong. The worst thing I could do was move on. And that's exactly what I was doing. 2 days after she walked off my porch with her shoulders up and her pride limping behind her, I got a text from her sister. Hey, just FYI, Tabitha's been not well. She's talking about quitting her job. Says she can't sleep. Maybe just check in. I stared at it. Let it sit there on my screen like it was radioactive. Then I put my phone down and kept eating my sandwich. Because here's the truth. I spent years checking in on someone who was never home. Her sister meant well, but she was asking me to put the fire out in a house I didn't own anymore. And I wasn't going back to save a woman who set the place ablaze and then called it an accident. She had finally realized what I had known for months. You don't get to break someone and then ask them to hold your pieces. So no, I didn't check in. But I did make one final decision. I took my dog, my truck, and the last remaining bits of my patience, and I drove 3 hours to Asheville, the place we were supposed to spend our anniversary. I canceled that trip after I found the texts. But the reservation? Still active. So I went. Alone. Checked into the cabin with its old pine floors, and the view she used to say looked like a screensaver you could breathe. I sat on the porch with a notebook and wrote down everything I'd wanted to say to her over the last 6 months. Not to send. Just to release it. All the quiet disappointments. All the passive-aggressive apologies. All the ways I shrank myself to fit the life she claimed to love. Then I folded the paper, tossed it into the fireplace, and watched it curl into ash. She wanted sparks? There they were. You know what happens when you stop talking about someone who expected to live rent-free in your head? They get louder. I came back from Asheville to 5 voicemails, 6 texts, and an email with the subject line, "Can we talk like adults?" I didn't respond. So she started reaching out to mutual friends. Some played Switzerland. Others started to vanish. And that's when I realized losing people isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's just vacuuming the dust off a shelf that never held anything solid in the first place. One friend, Bryce, actually said, "I think she's sorry, man. She's been going through it." I just smiled. She was sorry when she ran out of cover, I said, not when she lit the match. He didn't know what to say after that. Most people don't, when they're used to you being the quiet one. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I was clear. One morning, weeks after I thought it was over, she showed up again. Not at the house. She knew better. This time it was at the coffee shop where I'd been freelancing part-time. She walked in like she belonged in my day, like she was still a character in my story. I looked up from my laptop. She was in flats. No makeup. Hair in a bun. The "I'm sorry" starter kit. "Do you have a second?" she asked. I closed the laptop. Not to talk. Just because the conversation wasn't going to take long. I just want to say something, she began. You don't have to say anything back. That part was true. I didn't. I miss you, Cal. Not just the things you did. You. I raised one eyebrow. She continued. I messed up. I got caught up in whatever that was. But I've been thinking a lot. And I don't think I ever stopped loving you. Tab. I said, voice calm. You didn't love me. You loved the way I loved you. She swallowed. I've changed, she said. No. I said, I did. And then I stood up, threw my empty cup away, and walked out. Because closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. Cruelty doesn't always come dressed as fire. Sometimes it looks like indifference. Sometimes it sounds like silence. And sometimes it comes wrapped in a velvet box. You remember that silver watch she once pointed out in a catalog? The one she said looked classy? The one I was going to buy for her on our anniversary? Well, I bought it. But not for her. I sent it to Julian, along with a handwritten note. Heard you like timeless things. Just wanted you to have something she doesn't pick out, then steal. No name. No return address. Just that. Petty? Maybe. But you know what's cruel? Letting a man know exactly what kind of person he bet on, and doing it with better handwriting than she ever deserved. I moved into a new place 2 months after the ink dried. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. Exposed brick. A balcony that catches the light just right at 7:15 a.m. I started painting again. Badly, but joyfully. I planted herbs in pots. Basil mostly, because it smells like starting over. I adopted a second dog. Named him Ledger, because I'm keeping score, but not like before. And every night, I sleep like a man who no longer has to wonder if the person beside him is dreaming about someone else. Tabitha, she still pops up now and then. Birthday reminders. A song we used to like. But I let those moments pass like trains I don't need to catch anymore. Because the greatest revenge is living the life they told themselves you were too boring to build. And building it without them. Quietly. Completely. And with zero intention of ever folding your socks the same way again.